Hi, I'm Jock.
Hey, I'm Ray.
You're listening to The Pig Wrestlers, a podcast where Ray and I are reviewing this book, Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack.
Some exciting news.
Go on then.
So the book Never Wrestle With A Pig is out of print. Mark McCormack passed away a number of years ago, and the book's out of print. It's not available for sale in any format: paperback, hardback, audiobook, Kindle, whatever. And so I've been trying for years now to find out who controls the rights. I've written to Penguin Random House. I've tried to get in touch with everybody I can. I have on Monday a call with Mark McCormack's family.
Wow.
So we're going to talk about the book and see what, if anything, we can do together.
That's fantastic.
And now that there's a realistic possibility that we could get the book back into print, my mind is now going through, well, what are all the things we want to do with it? And so the simple stuff is, let's just put the current version of the book back into print while we develop another revised edition of it. And then once we've got a revised edition of it, definitely like Kindle and audiobook. Who would narrate the audiobook? Obviously, Mark McCormack built the world's biggest talent agency. There must be some incredibly grateful people who have a strong connection with him who would love to voice the book. It could be a nice celebration. And alongside that, a website that does real justice, like is genuinely modern. And so Max, who, his journey is struggling entrepreneur for 8 years, finds TikTok after losing his job, and then from a standing start in 10 months gets to 1.6 million followers. And obviously that's not how he makes money. So his goal is to help people who live a healthy lifestyle. And so he did this cookbook. And it's just a PDF, right? That you can buy. And it's really good. So I bought it last week, and they're like, this is a really good book. Like, you could have just cobbled something together, but the details have all been really well thought about. And every recipe page has a video embedded into the PDF so that you can see him doing it.
Yeah.
It's okay, so when you publish a physical book, you'll have a QR code that brings up the video. This is amazing. And so Penguin Random House have reached out to him to publish another book.
Good.
Which is amazing. And so, vicariously via him, I'm learning about that world of publishing. Turns out they don't pay very much in royalties.
No.
Yeah, tell me about your experience. So, did General Assembly do it all themselves? Did they have a partner? What happened?
General Assembly decided they wanted to do a book series. So General Assembly paid Hachette a reasonable chunk of cash to get these books off the ground, and then commissioned writers. So I was one of those writers. I think what might have happened, although I can't really verify this, is that I think the person who's supposed to be writing the book pulled out quite late on in the process. I don't know. But anyway, so basically said, look, can you write a product management book in 3 months? And I went, sure. Because why the hell not? If somebody offers you the opportunity, you're going to say, of course, you can have a go, right? What typically is the case is that the publisher, or in this case, General Assembly, because they're kind of one step removed, will typically pay an advance. When the book has earned out the equivalent amount of royalties, then you start getting more money again. But until that point, you don't. So it's like a down payment. And the size of the advance basically is their guess of how much they think this book is going to earn. And yeah, it's going to take maybe 10, 15 years possibly to earn out the advance, I reckon, at the rate we're going. And it's not bad for a niche business book.
And so how do they report the performance of the book sales?
So every 6 months, I get a royalty report on sales from the various territories, divided up by the types of books, whether hardback, paperback, etc., bulk, and that kind of thing. It's just basically a massive spreadsheet. I go away and sort of digest that and figure out how much of the advance is left to pay out. And eventually that will get to the point where I can start sending them the invoice for the royalties they owe me again.
Oh, so you have to then invoice them?
Once I get to that stage, yeah, but it's going to be a while before that happens. At the moment, we're still just sort of ticking down the advice.
It's a complex world, isn't it?
Once you kind of take away all of the costs of publishing and the risk that the publisher takes for putting the book together and putting it out there and marketing, they're looking for the few big sellers to subsidize all of the smaller, less likely bets in their portfolio. Because, of course, not every book is going to be a Harry Potter or a Tom Clancy or whoever.
Did you see recently, I think it's a Department of Culture and Media and Sport Select Committee that said what's happening with artists and writers' portions of streaming revenue is not right, which would be transformative.
It would be, but it would probably also break all of the streaming companies because their whole model has sort of solidified around streaming royalties being a certain proportion of their costs. If you suddenly multiply that by a factor of 10, 50, 20, 100, you know.
But what if it's not the streaming companies that lose out? What if it's the record labels? Or if they say, streaming company charges 30%, Spotify gets 30%, and 70% currently is like 60 or 59% record company, and then 11% everybody else. And
yes, but every artist has got their own contract with their recording labels, and I don't necessarily think that
statute can override that. So statute can say, simplistically speaking, royalties paid to artists and writers, etc., needs to equal the same amount that the record label makes. And therefore the record label just needs to take everything that they earn and split it 50-50. One piece to them, one piece to the others.
The problem is that they're not, their cost models are still set up to only work.
Very profitable right now. Universal, Sony, very, very profitable on the back of streaming. Like I get the analyst reports about like Vivendi and Universal, because Universal's about to IPO.
Sure.
And Tencent and all their music holdings, including Universal. And very, very profitable. Like there's a lot of money that is excessively profitable right now.
If you suddenly say to a bunch of very, very highly paid music executives, by the way, your salary is going to be 1/10 of what it was before because we're suddenly now dealing with a very different set of costs to what we had before, they will walk.
I've heard this comment in a number of scenarios. So then Gordon Brown brought in a 50p tax rate for the highest earners. And when the current government reduced the entrepreneur's relief to a capped amount, I think it's like $1 million now. And a bunch of people in both those scenarios said, people are going to walk.
So it's almost like price elasticity, isn't it? So it's kind of like cost elasticity, if you like. How much can you take away before the system breaks?
I think you can take 100% and the system doesn't break. So in the 80s or late 70s, the income tax rate in the UK topped up at 80%, I think it was.
Yeah, not the greatest time of our country, but...
No, but people survived. Like things went on and, people didn't flood away. These people who run the big record labels, they're going to carry on running the big record labels. They just have a new dynamic. It's like retail, like high street retail. It goes through some churn and change, but those people aren't reinventing themselves to go to a different industry. Some do, clearly. So
high street is kind of a good analog. So massively disruptive year and a half for the high street, which to be fair, wasn't in fantastic shape to begin with, right? A lot of the companies that went bust were circling the drain well before COVID hit the high streets. But what's happening is kind of these big established brands like, Debenhams is gone, Topshop's gone, most of the Arcadia group's gone basically as well. And it's the challengers like Boohoo bought Debenhams. So these brands kind of live on, but without the shackles, if you like, of the expense of real estate on high streets. It's going to be a very different thing. Now, maybe a few, retailers of that old school type will survive in their current form. And it all really boiled down to whether their businesses were diverse enough to take the hit on losing the footfall in favor of the stuff that was happening online.
Look at restaurants. So, restaurants were basically shut down overnight.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for the maturity of Deliveroo and Uber Eats as networks, those restaurants would have all gone bust.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But thanks to those networks, they're probably doing better than they ever have done.
It's kind of opened up new markets in some respects. Now they have a wider catchment that they would never necessarily be able to service.
And look at Mr. Beast. So there's this guy on social media called Mr. Beast. And through dark kitchens, he's opened a nationwide US chain of burger restaurants named after him.
I was reading a really interesting article, and I'll have to dig it out again. But essentially, there's been an explosion in kind of cloned, almost sub-brands of fast food things. So every, sort of Denny's and Wendy's all have like chicken wings brands for delivery, because essentially they've all jumped on that emerging trend and realized that it's almost like these random kind of Amazon brands that appear and disappear seemingly at will. They just kind of fire up a quick brand to capitalize on a particular trend for something, and they can effectively kill it off or shut it down. But there's single restaurants catering to like 15 different brands all in one house.
So the capital expenditure now goes into like the network, the Deliveroo and the dark kitchens. And so your startup cost, like with AWS and a tech startup, is actually really small. Like you don't actually need a lot of capital to get started up. What you need is a route to market.
Yeah.
And there is with like Deliveroo and stuff. And that's why like Amazon is so phenomenal, because it's not just buying stuff from Amazon. You're buying stuff from everybody else who's selling through Amazon, because you turn up to Amazon and there's the ability to have a marketplace there. So, that t-shirt you're wearing, if you really love it, you could be selling thousands of them a month just by getting a manufacturer to print them, send them to an Amazon fulfillment center, and you just check a dashboard.
And that's the thing. So here's the interesting trend. So what COVID has forced is innovation in supply chain and fulfillment.
Right.
Because now everyone has essentially had to start copying Amazon's model. And if you look at those restaurants, again, kind of that are servicing 15 plus different brands of fast food, they're probably selling 4 or 5 different brands of wings. Yeah. And all that really differs is maybe some very slight changes in recipe and the fact that they've got to stick the right logo on the receipt and they've got to answer the phone with the right name of the company. But essentially, they're selling exactly the same thing, but branded differently through multiple channels. You're effectively spread betting your brand.
Have you seen the ridiculous rise of all these like 15-minute convenience stores? Like, you can order something and it'll be with you in like 15 minutes.
Not where I live.
Like Wheezy and Get Here and Gorillas. There's like 11 of them who've received like over the last year or two a ridiculous amount of VC funding, and like they're all in London right now.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me while you were speaking that maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to come in and build that infrastructure and just lease it to all of these people, because they're all looking for sites, and there's only so many sites that are really available.
What they need.
If you can provide the site and let them all like take a piece of it.
Watch this space. You're telling me Amazon is going to take a piece of that?
Amazon have tried to do like convenience and grocery, right? And largely failed, like Amazon Fresh and stuff like that.
Well, they haven't really properly started yet. So they bought Whole Foods, right?
Yeah, so they bought Whole Foods, yeah.
They bought Whole Foods. They've tried, they were just about opening up their cashierless grocery stores, convenience stores, just before the beginning of COVID.
Have you seen the memes online?
I can only imagine. I think it's the fact that if it changes the behavior of shoppers, that now people are, oh, sorry, as says the shoplifter with like 3 bottles of gin up the jumper. I thought it was in Amazon. They don't need those physical convenience stores to succeed. But you can tell that they've learned a whole bunch of stuff about in-person retail. Now, if they can take that learning and build the platform or the infrastructure or the template for now, as you're saying, all of these other fulfillment and delivery companies to just take advantage of, it's like the same model you use with Amazon Web Services. They provide decent levels of building block. They let people combine them on their own platform. They observe which building blocks or combinations work best together and which are in demand. And then they provide a higher level service to replace that building block that's priced so low it wouldn't make sense to build it yourself. And they just keep repeating this pattern of using their customers to show them where to build the innovation.
And so, just thinking out loud, Argos would be really well placed to like pivot into this model if there was a profit in there, because they've got the network of stores.
They're effectively doing that, but with Sainsbury's, because now Argos's tend to be concessions within existing Sainsbury's stores.
Totally. So they've got this footprint that covers basically the whole of the UK.
Yeah. If anything, Argos has now expanded its footprint as a result of being acquired by Sainsbury's.
Argos, feasibly, if they could tap into an on-demand delivery network, get you your whatever from the Argos catalog within 15 minutes to half an hour. Do you remember Tom Allison was doing this? So Tom Allison, one of the founders of eCourier,
All right.
had this idea called Shuttle.
Oh, yes, Shuttle. They were acquired by
eBay. Yeah.
Yes. I remember Shuttle, yeah.
And so the idea was you could order something from Amazon and have it delivered in an hour.
Yeah, that was before Amazon Prime happened.
Well, long before.
Yeah.
For like an hour. You could have
Yeah.
delivered in an hour. So maybe he was like well before his time, but obviously to get a decent exit out of it.
I was going to say, they were snapped up. They'd barely been running for any length of time before they got snapped up by eBay.
But like if Argos revived that, post-COVID, there's a lot of people who, go onto the Argos app, press a button, 20 minutes later, there's a guy at the door with it.
What Argos and Sainsbury's have is they're closer, they're like within the last mile. Yeah. So they're like the edge distribution to Amazon's centralized distribution.
Totally. They are very well placed. Can we buy Sainsbury's and do this?
Oh, shame we didn't buy some Morrisons the other day.
What happened to Morrisons? They get acquired.
They're in the process of being acquired.
So Sainsbury's is worth 6.26 billion. So you'd be paying less than 1 time's revenue to buy Sainsbury's.
Somebody's going to figure it out. The fact that Morrisons is gone, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Sainsbury's and Tesco's kind of get snapped up by a big investment consortium soon as well.
So Deliveroo, for me, is trading at a discount right now because of a terrible IPO. So if you combined Sainsbury's and Deliveroo for its network, Sainsbury's for its product, I guess.
And customer base.
You could do what all these gorillas and Get Here and everybody is trying to do today. And like no capital infrastructure needed because it's already been done. Deliveroo's done their bit. Sainsbury's / Argos have done their bit. You'd have basically nationwide coverage from day dot.
But look at the transformative effect that Ocado has had on Marks and Spencer's, which was probably one of the best timed coups they could have pulled.
So Ocado's still publicly traded. So
yep.
14 billion market cap, by the way. Are they like selling that stuff as Marks and Spencer or their own brand?
So Marks and Spencer's are selling their own stuff and having it delivered and fulfilled by Ocado.
Right. So Ocado are providing a fulfillment service to like retailers across Europe. Yeah.
They are the Deliveroo to Marks and Spencer's. So in terms of that transformative effect, because Marks and Spencer's didn't really have that capability before. Now, the interesting thing will be what's happened to Waitrose since losing Ocado.
Yeah, I think Waitrose really struggled.
Well, it was really bad timing because it happened just before the pandemic hit. Right? So they were doubly screwed. But, to what you were saying about the next sensible acquisition, if Sainsbury's, is looking for a big exit potentially, by acquiring someone like Deliveroo that would then bolster its own capability and fit in nicely with what the Argos acquisition, then yes, suddenly they'd have a quite different scenario. You got to remember that Tesco's has always had that Tesco Direct online e-commerce thing in the background, more so than Sainsbury's has ever had.
Deliveroo share price year to date, it's a little bit up. Essentially, it's a 5.5 billion market cap. So it would be almost a like-for-like merger and be worth just a little bit less than Ocado is worth.
Yeah.
With substantially more revenue, substantially more custom, substantially more footprint, and substantially more upside.
You're listening to the Pig Wrestlers podcast. We're meant to be reviewing the book Never Wrestle With A Pig by Mark McCormack, but we don't always get around to it.